Air raid sirens have again been sounding in Tel Aviv tonight as Iran launches more retaliatory strikes. Our chief foreign correspondent Trey Yingst is in Tel Aviv tonight. Good evening, Trey.
John, good evening. Tonight, Israel is bracing for more incoming Iranian ballistic missile fire. Throughout the day, missiles soared through the skies of this country, most of them intercepted by Israel's missile defense systems. Pieces of one missile landed just outside of Tel Aviv. Israeli officials say the Iranian regime launched ballistic missiles at Israel's second largest city of Tel Aviv, one of them with a cluster munition on top, causing a significant amount of damage to this community of Bnei Brak. The Israelis are striking back today. The Israeli Air Force targeted a Supreme Council building where officials were tallying votes for Iran's next supreme leader. Israel's prime minister says this offensive action will continue.
We will continue to do what is necessary for our defense. We are on the fourth day of Operation Roaring Lion. We are roaring, and we are operating.
And in Iran, funerals were held today for school children who were reportedly killed during the opening round of U.S. and Israeli strikes. Iran's foreign minister making new remarks about the developing conflict.
We are also dealing with Americans who are attacking us day and night by every means. And with the Israelis, of course.
Iran's foreign minister did not mention Gulf countries in his remarks. Iran continues to attack them. For now, those countries remain on defense. And tonight, Qatar says they have arrested 2 cells of IRGC members in their country. John?
Oh, that's news. Interesting. Trey Yingst for us in Tel Aviv. As always, Trey, thank you. Stay safe.
Dana, there is an awful lot to go over based on what Trey is just reporting there. This assembly of clerics is significant for the succession of the next leader in Iran. They would be meeting in the town of Qom, Q-O-M, south of Tehran, marked by this blue dot right here on the map. What the Israelis are telling us over the past 12 hours or so, they've hit 60 different strikes going after missiles and other parts of the Iranian terror regime throughout the country. So let's keep a very close eye on this. Meanwhile, in the Persian Gulf, you got the Iranian Navy, of which they had 11 ships, and this is one of them. All 11 have been disassembled in the Persian Gulf, and they are out of service. And I can show you a little bit over here on the geography. Gulf of Oman, that's where the Lincoln is. Persian Gulf over here. If you look at this red dot over here, that's a frigate that CENTCOM says that they sank earlier today. Then all these are naval bases here in the Persian Gulf, which would symbolize that ship I just showed you, all 11 now out of commission. Move on over here to the region. These are the retaliatory strikes. That's Bahrain on Saturday. Retaliatory strikes in the region so far that Iran has reached out against, all right? A lot of these Gulf countries, okay? 11 on our map so far. And you heard Jennifer mention the U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia late last night. It was hit by at least 2 Iranian drones, maybe 3. And so far today, by the way, that embassy was empty. The American embassy in Kuwait has been closed, and we'll look for other developments throughout the area. U.S. government saying American citizens, if you're in these Gulf countries, to go ahead and find a commercial route out. Perhaps easier said than done for the next couple of days with the airports the way they're lining up. Let me move to this. U.S. Embassy in Riyadh is a substantial, look, you got a swimming pool, you got tennis courts, pretty good place to be dispatched, but not during this time when the Iranian drones come flying in. We'll update that throughout the day. Think about now what the proxies for Iran have been reduced to. Think about this now. Hezbollah launched rockets into northern Israel 2 days ago. And the Lebanese government condemned Hezbollah. When has that happened? It's happened now. Hamas has been neutralized here in Gaza. The Houthis down here at Yemen, after firing so many missiles into Israel over the past year, they've been quiet. Here in Iran, the Revolutionary Guard Corps, they are under tremendous pressure now. The Shiite militias in Iraq, however, we have reports of them acting out against U.S. bases that are stationed in the eastern part of Iraq and the northern part of Iraq. But this is a substantial adjustment in Middle Eastern power that runs against the regime in Iran. Let's move on over here. I'll rejoin my partner, Dana, over the desk here, and we'll bring in Dan Senor to pick it up.
Yeah, Dan Senor, thank you so much. He's the host of Call Me Back. It's a podcast I have to listen to anytime it's on. I almost feel like there's no better guest for us right now than you. And maybe let's start with the breaking news that Trey Yingst just had about this possible attack on the Assembly of Experts in Iran.
Well, there's been two supreme leaders in Iran since the revolution. Ayatollah Khamenei, most recently, until he was killed, and Ayatollah Khomeini. It is the most important figure in this regime. If the U.S. government and Israel are committed to an end to this regime, then it seems that making sure there's not another supreme leader is important. So them trying to appoint a new supreme leader, as one friend of mine said the other day, is like becoming the drummer in Spinal Tap. You know, the drummers just keep getting disappeared, you know, and so you don't want to be anointed a new supreme leader of Iran if this is what the U.S. and the Israeli government are focused on. I think right now Iran is heading in one of two directions from U.S. policymakers' perspective. One is, do you do sufficient damage to Iran's military capabilities, destroying obviously its nuclear program, but also its missile production program, its drones, and really degrade its capacity to be a menace in the region, and yet find someone multiple layers down who can kind of run the place. It's sort of like the Venezuela model, and have Iran be kind of a shadow of itself in terms of its reach in the region. That's one approach. The other approach is really put enormous pressure on the regime to the point that it invites real protests, like we saw 2 months ago, to put pressure from internally on the regime, that the regime just can't survive, that there's no one in the regime, in the current regime, to deal with, to run the place, and then something else emerges.
Dan, I want to play this from Benjamin Netanyahu last night. He was on with Sean Hannity. There's a lot of concern about how long this thing goes. You were in Iraq 20 years ago. I'll ask you about that momentarily. First, from the Israeli Prime Minister last night.
The reason that we had to act now is because they were, after we hit their nuclear sites and their ballistic missiles program, you'd think they learned a lesson, but they didn't, because they're unreformable. They started building new sites, new places, underground bunkers that would make their ballistic missile program and their atomic bomb programs immune within months. If no action was taken now, no action could be taken in the future. And then they could target America.
Yeah, the other thing he said last night is that this is not an endless war. He emphasized that. Why is this different, in your view, from Iraq 20 years ago?
Well, first of all, in terms of the military assets that are in the region. So in the lead up to the Iraq War in 2003, we had the equivalent of what we have now in the Middle East in terms of naval assets and air assets. The one big difference is we also had approximately 250,000 U.S. troops in the region. We don't have that now because the president's made clear he's not going to deploy ground troops. Now, the question is, can Iran be sort of held together, and could there be some kind of transition without U.S. ground forces there? And I think we tend to over-analogize what is going on in Iran to the Iraq experience. They're two very different places. This could be a whole seminar, a whole podcast episode, Dana.
Let's do it.
But Iraq wasn't actually a real country. It was stitched together. Right, it was after the fall of the Ottoman Empire. It was really stitched together. There was this Kurdish area. There were Shiites. There were Sunnis. There was not a great sense of national unity. So the only thing that held the country together was that all these people were living under some kind of communal repression under Saddam for over 3 decades. But once Saddam was gone, it was hard to sort of hold this country together. It took a lot of work, ultimately a lot of time, and a lot of sacrifice from our end. Iran is a real country that predates the revolution. Iraq was not that. There's a real sense of national pride in this country.
We've seen that.
Right. And so I just, by the way, interestingly, in Syria.
Is that pride from before the revolution?
Totally.
Okay.
Totally. Yeah,
that's important.
It predates the revolution. This is a country and a culture and a history that goes back 20 centuries. Mm-hmm. And so there was no such thing in Iraq. And so I think look, we have a tendency in U.S. policy, which is understandable, is we tend to over-categorize and kind of create these binary scenarios based on past experiences, right? And so the debate, I think, until Trump became president in this term, the debate in U.S. policy had been either kind of endless wars, right, and just quagmire, or non-intervention entirely. And that was our choice. Either we do nothing, or if we do something, we're stuck forever. And that was, what he's demonstrating is so far, we'll see, is there's some way to operate in between, as we saw in Venezuela, for instance.
I just want to say, in 2026 now, not 2003, but in 2026, if this works, it's a game changer. for a lot of countries throughout the world. Dan, thanks for coming on today.
But the other big thing in terms of the difference is you have the Gulf states who are now fighting against Iran. I mean, and Iran fighting against them. That's completely different.
What Iran has managed to do in terms of unifying the Gulf states with one another and then unifying the Gulf states with Israel. Look, this has been one of the messiest geopolitical spots in the world, going back to the oil embargo in '73. We might be seeing the beginning of a change.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
For coming on.
Despite Iran claiming it had enough uranium for 11 nuclear bombs, Democratic senators insisting there was no danger.
The simple fact is there is no imminent threat.
There was no imminent threat to the United States of America by the Iranians.
Very soon, the Senate will vote on a bipartisan war powers resolution. Our resolution affirms what the Constitution already says. The President cannot send U.S. forces to fight a war in Iran without congressional approval.
No, it doesn't. Our next guest was in the Gang of Eight briefing yesterday. Senate Intel Committee Chair Tom Cotton. Senator, is your take the Senate same as Senator Warner and Senator Blumenthal and Senator Schumer? More questions than answers?
Brian, no, not at all. I thought Secretaries Rubio and Hegseth, Chairman Kaine, and Director Ratcliffe did a very good job of laying out the intelligence and the current state of operations. The simple reality is Iran has a vast missile arsenal that far exceeds the combined missile defenses of the United States, our Arab friends, and Israel. And it gets much worse every single month. That is an unacceptable risk for the United States. It's an existential risk for our Arab friends in Israel. And it wouldn't get better if we waited for 6 or 12 or 18 months to find a more imminent risk. In fact, Iran has posed an imminent risk to the United States for 47 years as they've maimed and killed thousands of Americans without that vast missile arsenal. The president was right to act when he did.
Senator, you know that Blumenthal, who has a lot of foreign policy experience, Warner, a ton of foreign policy experience, and Schumer, they know the danger of Iran. They know it's persistent and an incessant danger of Iran, and that we could have hit any time in the last 15 years, but other presidents decided not to. Do you think they really don't understand the Iranian threat? I mean, how do they make those statements with a straight face?
Brian, I can't get inside any of my Democratic colleagues' heads. I just disagree with their view here. It's in keeping, though, with the Democratic Party's view of Iran going back decades. Look at Barack Obama's terrible nuclear deal that didn't block Iran's path to a nuclear weapon. It paved Iran's path to a nuclear weapon, while also doing nothing to address this second and urgent threat, their vast missile arsenal. That's why the president had to act when he did.
And by the way, when those Iranians stood up in the streets and asked for U.S. help, President Obama made amends with the government. He ignored those requests, and they got murdered in the streets. This president answered the call for a myriad of reasons. Senator, there's a story out there that the president was pushed into this battle by Benjamin Netanyahu. What's the truth?
Well, first, Brian, no one pushes or drags Donald Trump anywhere. He acts in the vital national security interest of the United States. And second, Secretary Rubio addressed this point yesterday after our Gang of Eight briefing. Israel faced an existential risk, and they were prepared to strike Iran alone. If that happened, Iran was very likely to target our troops. That may address the question of why now? Why not 2 weeks ago? Why not 2 months from now? The president, though, did not want to put our troops in harm's way. The more fundamental question, though, is why? Why did we have to carry out this operation against Iran? And as I said, that's because they have a vast missile arsenal that far exceeds our combined missile defenses, and it gets worse every single month. And that is an unacceptable threat to the United States.
So, Senators, people have to pick what they don't like about this mission. They could say that the president was pushed by Netanyahu. Well, the other story in the Washington Post and New York Post on Saturday said that MBS, behind the scenes, Saudi Arabia's leader, he was saying you have to do this. This is a problem in this region. This has to be taken care of, and there was an urgency. So do people not acknowledging that there was our allies in the region also saw this as an issue?
Yeah, Israel's far from alone here. Our Arab friends have faced a serious threat from Iran for years as well. And it's no secret that most Arab leaders have been working closely with the United States and Israel to contain Iran, going back at least to the Obama administration. And I would point out that as soon as Iran targeted these Arab countries, they didn't plead for peace. They didn't ask Donald Trump to stop. They asked Donald Trump for targeting information so they could join in the strikes in Iran. That's what a real coalition looks like. We're all now fighting together to try to finally eliminate the threat that a revolutionary Iran poses to the United States, to our Arab friends, and to Israel.
And I think the Chancellor of Germany is going to have the same message as our Gulf states. I think they've been the strongest out of the European partners. They're going to be in Washington today. Senator Tom Cotton, thanks so much. Appreciate it. So I want to update you on what's going on with this ongoing war. CENTCOM is sharing new declassified video of the B-1 bombers targeting Iran's missile capabilities. I mean, you see that they're one of 3 strategic bombers in the U.S. arsenal. The payload's about 75,000 pounds. There's really nothing it can't carry. And the missiles have laser joint point attack munitions, long-range cruise missiles. It has about 4 in the crew. Something else I want to show you is the notable civilian sites that were hit by Iran. Look at this. They're going to the Gulf states, and you're seeing some of the video now of the B-1 bomber. But notable civilian sites, look at where they've hit. Israel was expected, sadly, but in Bahrain, they're going after the Crown Plaza in Qatar, the residential areas. They're hitting towers over in Kuwait. And we know we had that friendly fire incident in Kuwait as well. And in Iraq, they hit the Erbil International Airport. And there were some German barracks in that region. So they've gotten the attention of our European allies that were reluctant, and European and the Gulf allies that were going to sit back. Now they all seemingly are more eager to get involved. Our next guest is a former B-2 stealth bomber pilot. Retired U.S. Air Force Brigadier General Rob Spaulding joins us now. General, always great to have you on. When we look at what we're bringing to the theater, the president says he's bringing more firepower starting today. Well, is this what he was talking about?
Well, it's definitely part of it. You know, I think what we can see now is the Iranian regime is in its death throes. It's like the last spasm of a fireworks. They're going to try to inflict as much damage as possible. Of course, they hit the AWS data center. You missed that one. And then also Europe. So they're trying to get whoever they can to bring pressure on Israel and the U.S. to stop.
So what we want to do is stop the targeting of these Gulf states, obviously, let alone making sure that that the Strait of Hormuz stays open. But I want to go to the third wall if we can. This is what they have left in terms of missiles and rockets. It's estimated, this is the range. So they got 186 who are very short-range missiles. But they got 1,864-mile range missiles. They can hit a pretty wide swath still, about 2,500 each of the long-range and short-range and medium missiles. What's it going to take to get rid of that arsenal? Do we have to wait for them to shoot in order to destroy the launchers, or the things that we could do ahead of time?
You know, anytime you war game against mobile ballistic missiles, it's literally the hardest thing to kill. If you remember the Scud hunt during the first Iraq war, they're just really easy to hide and really move and shoot. And so that's going to be the hardest part, is to get those. I think the things that you have to do is focus on command and control, erasing the regime's ability to control those forces. And hopefully over time you put pressure enough so that these guys stop doing what they're doing. But it is going to be an issue for a while.
So, General, the one thing we are concerned about is missile defense and interceptors for our sake and for our Arab allies. They're using our stuff. They say the interceptors could run out in about a week at this current pace, and we're using expensive interceptors to take down in some cases, a $20,000 drone. That math doesn't add up.
Absolutely, and I think that's why this air campaign against finding these mobile ballistic missiles is so important, to keep pressure on them and to prevent from running out of munitions in the defense side of it. So it's important to get them while they're still on the ground.
Right. Hey, General, hold on a second.
Get right to Trey Yingst. He's live in Tel Aviv. He's got more on the breaking news right now. Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good afternoon. We're following these reports out of Dubai that indicate an Iranian drone hit the U.S. consulate in Dubai. We understand that the building and many of these surrounding buildings had been fully or at least partially evacuated. And again, these are just initial reports coming in. Fox's Jennifer Griffin also confirming that a hit did take place in this area. As we look at this story and the Gulf countries under threat, just in the past 24 hours, this is the second hit on a U.S. consulate or embassy in the Gulf. Remember, overnight in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, 2 Iranian drones hit the compound, but that compound, again, also was evacuated beforehand. As this is taking place, it raises real questions about air defense systems around these areas. And I reviewed a couple videos online that are circulating, and it indicates this is an Iranian drone, a very similar sound to the same Shahed drones that the Iranians sold to the Russians in Ukraine. You could often see them in Ukraine when they would fly quite low, and it sounds almost like a loud lawnmower buzzing through the sky, and then ultimately there's an explosion. And again, a lot of different videos circulating from this area of Dubai showing that the area of the U.S. consulate in Dubai is on fire. There's black smoke rising from this part of the city. And so again, the threat from Iranian drones, and we talked about this last hour, the short-range threat will be much more difficult to reduce for the Israelis and the Americans after they go after these Iranian positions.
You know, Trey, when you take a look at where the United States consulate in Dubai is, it's right down near the old city. The British have a consulate down there as well. A couple of years ago, I was in Dubai and went through that whole area. I mean, that is an area deep in the heart of Dubai. And again, it's the old city, so that is a very prestigious location. For the Iranians to send a drone into that area, I mean, that's very brazen, and that's got to provoke a response from the Emirates.
Absolutely. And there were some satellite images circulating earlier this week that showed when the Iranians started to attack the UAE, the plumes of black smoke rising from cities like Dubai, right next to the Palm Island, this man-made island chain, were so large they were picked up on satellite images. And again, it gives you a sense, anyone who's ever been to Dubai, this is a very advanced city, modern infrastructure, very tall hotels and buildings. And the fact that these Iranian drones are now soaring through the skies of Dubai and Abu Dhabi and other areas within the Gulf, it indicates that the Iranians are going after A, civilian infrastructure, but B, infrastructure that's never seen war since it's been built. I mean, the Israelis are used to sheltering in place. They're used to this fire toward population centers. These Gulf cities and countries are not.
Trey Yingst joining us with the breaking news out of Tel Aviv.
President, we're all on the same page when it comes to this regime in Iran, but across the street from me here, not so much. Alex Hoff for us. Alex, thank you. Sandra?
All right, John, Danny Danon is Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, and he joins us live here in our New York City studio. Ambassador, welcome to you.
Thank you for having me, Sandra.
You are a newsmaker at the center of all this. What do you want the world to know about this moment?
We are not done yet. It's going to be a long operation, but it's moving in the right direction. We are degrading the capabilities of Iran, so they will not be able to launch missiles like they do now to Tel Aviv, to Jerusalem, to Dubai, Abu Dhabi. More than 10 countries are being attacked as we speak. So it will take a few more days, but we're starting to see the results of the attacks of the Israeli Air Force, of the US Air Force, and I think we are getting ready to move to the next stage where we're actually going to target more regime targets, more regime assets on the ground, and hopefully the time will come for the Iranian people to take their future in their hands.
There are some members of Congress who are questioning whether or not this was the best move for the United States and to do this now, including some. Ruben Gallego, the Democrat from Arizona, says we're following Netanyahu. There's New York Times reporting that Netanyahu is instrumental in convincing our president to act. Here's Jeanne Shaheen, the U.S. senator, and Jeff Merkley, another senator, suggesting exactly the same. Listen.
There's real concern about who's really controlling America's foreign policy. Is it President Trump or is it Prime Minister Netanyahu?
Netanyahu was leading Trump around by a nose ring. This is like, basically, we're the puppy on the leash, and Netanyahu yanks the leash, and we have to act.
To them, you say what?
They know better than that. They know President Trump. No one can tell President Trump what to do or to drag him. You know, President Trump is a serious, strong leader. And he was actually the leader who decided to pull out from the JCPOA that President Obama signed. Mm-hmm. So it's not new. He's consistent. And once he saw that the negotiations are not going anywhere, he said enough is enough. There is no daylight between Israel and the US. We are fighting together. We are making peace together with many countries. And we actually believe the Iranians. When they say death to America, we believe them. When they say death to Israel, we believe them. And they have ballistic missiles. We see their capabilities now. They are very close to achieve nuclear warheads. So what those leaders expected? For us to sit down and wait that they will assemble the warheads on the ballistic missiles? That will be too late. And we have seen in the history what happened when you try to appease regimes that threaten the entire world. You cannot wait for the moment of no return. President Trump took the right decision. And you know, maybe it's not easy for him today, but I admire him because he thought about the future of the US, about our children, about our grandchildren. They will not have to live with a nuclear Iran.
President Trump responded to that question about whether or not Israel forced his hand, and he said this, listen.
No, I might have forced their hand. You see, we were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack first. I didn't want that to happen. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand. But Israel was ready, and we were ready.
Okay, so now the question becomes what happens next, Ambassador. And here's Secretary of State Marco Rubio. This was yesterday, saying that the hardest hits are yet to come from the U.S. military. Listen.
I'm not going to give away the details of our tactical efforts, but the hardest hits are yet to come from the U.S. military. The next phase will be even more punishing on Iran than it is right now. Someone was screaming, how long will it take? I don't know how long it'll take. We have objectives. We will do this as long as it takes to achieve those objectives, and we will achieve those objectives. The world will be a safer place when we're done with this operation.
So what can you tell us about next steps here?
Well, Secretary Rubio is absolutely right. We took care of most of the air defense system of the Iranian regime. Now it's going to be much easier for our pilots, for the U.S. pilots, maybe other pilots that will join. We hear the Gulf countries are considering to join the efforts against Iran. It will be much easier to attack assets in Iran. So basically, we're talking about the nuclear sites, the ballistic missile infrastructure. There are a lot of targets, but I would pay attention. Iran is still dangerous. They panicked, they're desperate, and we see what they're doing now, targeting civilian sites in neighboring countries. That shows desperation. So it's still dangerous. We are still in a war. It's not over yet.
To that point, I want to finish off with some news that we're just getting into us from the State Department right now, that evacuation flights of Americans from the region have begun. We don't have any reportable country information as of now due to security sensitivities, but just confirming this just in, evacuations have begun of American citizens from the Middle East.
Well, you know, we have heard the warning from the State Department. You know, I can tell you about my family, you know, in Israel, sitting in shelters for 4 days, not going out. You know, you stick with the food that you have. It's not easy. And now many other countries in the region, moderate countries, are experiencing the same experience. But I think they understand it's worth the price. It's better to suffer now, but to actually have a safer future for our children.
Ambassador, I really appreciate you joining us here in our New York City studio.
Thank you very much, Sandra.
All right, thank you. John.
All right, we know how that ended. My apologies to Senator Graham. We got to jump over here. Senator Rubio speaking before he heads in there. We'll listen to this real quick.
9,000 Americans have been able to leave the region since the start of this war. We have about 1,500 Americans that are requesting assistance with departure. We have identified and continue to identify charter flights, military flight options, and expanded commercial flight options, meaning working with the airlines to send bigger airplanes with more seats, and the combination of those three things. The impediment we're facing now, in many cases, we've had a couple instances in which we have planes in the air and on the way, and unfortunately the airspace gets closed and they have to turn back around, so we're working through those challenges. Here's the message I want to deliver Americans who are in the Middle East and in need of assistance. It is very important, and I ask this of the networks as well. It is important for you to please put both the website and the phone numbers on your screens, because we need people. We need to know where you are. We need to know. We need to have contact information for Americans that need assistance. They have to register with us, because as these options begin to open up, and as they open up, we have to be able to call you. We have to be able to reach you. We have to be able to know where you're staying, so we can get this information to you and coordinate appropriately. And it'll be a variety of methods: charter flights, military flights and transports, expanded commercial commercial opportunities, and in some cases land routes that will allow them to go to neighboring countries who might have open airports at that point. So it's a lot of different things here that need to happen in order to move people, but it all starts by knowing that you're there. It all starts by knowing that where you are and how we can get a hold of you. So I'm asking the networks and all of the media outlets, please publicize the 2 phone numbers that we've put out, as well as the website, so people can contact us and register. We've had, thousands of people call already. As I said, we've identified almost 1,600 that are requesting assistance with departure, but we need you to please be able to identify that. As I came in, I also saw the media reports about Dubai's consulate. The last update I had with seconds before getting before these cameras was that a drone unfortunately struck a parking lot adjacent to the Chancellery building and then set off a fire in that place. All personnel are accounted for. As you're aware, we began drawing down personnel from our diplomatic facilities in advance of this. In the cases, for example, of Beirut, we basically drew down to a bare bones, as well as in Baghdad and in Erbil and in a couple other posts as well. So we've been very fortunate, obviously, but our embassies and our diplomatic facilities are under direct attack from a terroristic regime. With an update, I will obviously refer you to the Department of War. Suffice it to say that our objectives remain as they've been identified from the beginning and by the President laid out clearly yesterday. Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, and we will now not allow Iran to hide behind the immunity of a massive short-term ballistic missile inventory or the ability to make them or launch them. And so CENTCOM, in a joint operations, is carrying out a systematic destruction of their missile belt, destruction of their launchers, and destruction of their ability to make these, as well as the destruction of their Navy. From what I've been told by the Department of War, everything is on or ahead of schedule and proceeding on these objectives. We have every confidence in the world that these objectives will be achieved. The last point I would make is, and I said this yesterday and I repeat, what's about to, you're about to see, we're going to unleash Chang on these people in the next few hours and days. You're going to really begin to perceive a change in the scope and in the intensity of these attacks as, frankly, the 2 most powerful air forces in the world take apart this terroristic regime and defang it and take away its ability to threaten its neighbors or hide behind a zone of immunity that allows them to develop their nuclear ambitions. This terroristic, radical, cleric-led regime cannot be ever allowed to have nuclear weapons. We saw what they were willing to do to their own people. They were willing to slaughter their own people in the streets. Imagine what they would do to us. Imagine what they would do to others. Under President Trump, that will never, ever happen. All right?
Yesterday you talked about Israel. Mr. Secretary.
Please, guys, I can't hear them all. Yes.
Yesterday, you told us that Israel was going to strike Iran, and that's why we needed to get involved. Today, the president said that Iran was going to get.
Yeah, your statement is false. So that's not what I was asked very specifically. Were you there yesterday?
Yes, I asked a question.
No, were you the one that? Because somebody asked me a question yesterday. Did we go in because of Israel? And I said, you were asking me that follow-up, and I said no. I told you this had to happen anyway. The president made a decision, and the decision he made was that Iran was not going to be allowed to hide behind its ballistic missile program. That Iran was not going to be allowed to hide behind its ability to conduct these attacks. That decision had been made. The president systematically made a decision to systematically destroy this terroristic capability that they had, and we carried that out. I was very clear in that answer. This was a question of timing, of why this had to happen as a joint operation, not the question of the intent. Once the president made a decision that negotiations were not going to work, that they were playing us on the negotiations, and that this was a threat that was untenable, the decision was made to strike them. That's what I said yesterday, and you guys need to play it. If you're going to play these statements, you need to play the whole statement, not clip it to reach a narrative that you want to do, all right?
This is your statement. This is your statement, Mr. Secretary.
Go ahead.
What do you make of the war powers resolution that's being considered here in Congress?
I mean, Congress votes on those. They can if they want. There's mechanisms for it. We've complied with the War Powers Act, even though we believe it's unconstitutional, as has every other administration. Every other president has found the War Powers Act to be unconstitutional. Nonetheless, we notified Gang of Eight, which was an appropriate mechanism by which to notify Congress. We sent the notification within 48 hours, the way the law requires. I'm here today to have, I don't know, my 6th or 7th briefing before the entirety of the House and Senate, which is far more than I ever got from any administration in the time that I was here, certainly when I was a member of the Gang of Eight. And so we've complied with we've over-complied consistent with the law and what it requires. This is an action by the president to address a real threat. A real threat. This is hostilities designed to eliminate a threat to the safety and the security of the United States and to our allies.
Was there a plan in place to evacuate Americans before the attack took place?
Well, that's the plan we're trying to carry out. The problem is, or the challenge we are facing, is airspace closures. If a country closes their airport, for example, in some cases the airports have been hit. So the airport in Kuwait was hit. So if an airport's been attacked or the airspace is closed, then we can have the planes lined up to go, but we can't get them to land because we don't have the permissions to land there. So that's the challenge. But rest assured, we are confident that we are going to be able to assist every American. As I told you right now, we have about a little over 1,500, maybe closer to 1,600 Americans requesting assistance, and we know that we're going to be able to help them. It's going to take a little time because we don't control the airspace closures. That said, there may be more people out there that need help. We need to know who you are. So please, I'm asking the media, publicize the phone numbers and the website, because we need people to call in so we have their name, we have their contact information, we have their location and their request. So as these opportunities begin to open up, we can act very quickly to reach them and get them out of harm's way.
Mr. Secretary, I want to just clarify what you said. I want to clarify what you said, because you said...
There's nothing to clarify.
But you said I would get that...
No, but you have to read, if you're going to read the whole statement.
Your quote is about, we knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that would precipitate an attack.
Yeah, no, I understand. But listen, all right, let me understand.
Yeah,
but I had a very specific question from that gentleman, right?
The president said, the president said that...
Hold on one second. I asked a very...
force Israelis.
Okay, but let me answer, because this is my press conference. Sure. Okay. You asked me, I was asked a very specific question, so you guys can misrepresent it, but I was asked a very specific question yesterday. The bottom line is this. The president determined we were not going to get hit first. It's that simple, guys. We are not going to put Americans' troops in harm's way. If you tell the president of the United States that if we don't go first, we're going to have more people killed and more people injured, the president's going to go first. That's what he did. That's what the president will always do. He will always put the safety and security of our men and women in uniform and of all Americans before anything else. He's always going to do that, and that's what he did here. In addition to that, I would argue that this threat from Iran, they are hiding behind these missiles and hiding behind these drones. They wanted to reach a point where you couldn't touch them, and then they could do whatever the hell they wanted with their nuclear program. And there is no way in the world that this terroristic regime was going to get nuclear weapons, not under Donald Trump's watch.
So the U.S. attack had nothing to do with Israel. It had nothing to do with Israel.
This operation, there's a general question of why the president gave the green light, and then there's a question of why did it have to happen this weekend? Are you saying it had to happen this weekend because of that Israeli action?
No, this weekend presented a unique opportunity to take joint action against this threat. And we wanted this to have maximum success. We want this operation to be successful at achieving its objectives. I'll repeat the objectives. The president laid them out yesterday. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. It cannot have, and therefore it cannot have the things it was hiding behind to have a nuclear weapons program. What are those things? Number one, we are going to destroy their missiles and their missile launchers. We are going to destroy their capability to make these missiles and these launchers, and we are going to destroy their Navy. Those are the objectives, and this weekend, acting at this time, gave us the highest probability of success in achieving those objectives, and as the Department of War will brief you, we are on or ahead of schedule to do that.
So the U.S. attack would have happened no matter what? Would the U.S. attack have happened no matter what Israel is planning to do?
The House said Israel was going to act with or without
the president
the
had already made a decision to act on the timing. The president acted on the timing that gave us the highest chance of success, and that's what you're seeing play out right now. You're seeing it play out right now, and you'll see it in the days to come. We will systematically take apart their missile program. We will destroy their ability to sponsor terrorism, by the way. We will destroy their factories. We will destroy their Navy. Those objectives are going to be met. We're well on our way to meeting them. It will not be easy. There will be a price to pay for it, but that is a much lower price to pay than having a nuclear-armed Iran. I got to go brief these guys. Hold on. Yes.
Secretary.
Yes, ma'am.
Secretary, how heavily is the administration leaning into the 2001 AUMF for justification of these strikes?
What now?
How heavily is the administration?
Well, that's not our notification to Congress. Our notification, listen, let me explain to you guys this in simple English, okay? Iran is run by lunatics, religious fanatic lunatics. They have an ambition to have nuclear weapons. They intend to develop those nuclear weapons behind a program of missiles and drones and terrorism that the world will not be able to touch them for fear of those things. And this is the weakest they've ever been. Now is the time to go after them. The president made the decision to go after them, take away their missiles, take away their Navy, take away their drones, take away their ability to make those things so that they can never have a nuclear weapon. That's why the president made this decision. It was the right decision, and the world will be a safer place when these radical clerics no longer have access to these weapons. You see how they're using them now. Imagine how they would use them a year from now if they had more of these. All right, I got time for one more. Yeah, go ahead.
What exactly was the threat?
Several Democrats criticized what you said and argued
that the question is, several Democrats criticize. They're going to always criticize. We've been doing this for years, guys. They come out. I'll tell you right now, they're going to come out after the briefing and say, we didn't hear anything. We have more questions than answers. You mark my words. But we still do these briefings. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Secretary, their criticism was on the timeline. They said that Israel is dictating the timeline for the United States.
No,
and as you know, several people on the right have also agreed with that. How would you respond to that?
Well, the United States made a decision. Under the President of the United States made a decision. This is intolerable. Iran cannot have these missiles, cannot have these drones, cannot threaten the world. The President said this is the weakest they've ever been. If we don't hit them now, a year from now, or a year and a half from now, no one will be able to touch them, and they'll be able to do whatever they want. And he made a decision to go. And he made a decision to go in a joint operation because it gave us the highest chance of success. And he made a decision to go first because he concluded that we were not going to get hit first. We were not going to absorb a blow from them. We were going to go first. He was not going to run the risk that they could attack us before we could hit them, because in addition to costing lives, it would undermine the effectiveness of our operation. All right, guys, I got to go. Thank you.
He's the former deputy commander of U.S. Central Command. He led operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, served as a Navy SEAL with combat experience all over the Middle East. Admiral Harward grew up in Iran, went to school in Tehran, and is a member of the Iran Policy Project at the Jewish Institute for National Security of America. Well, thank you, sir, for all of that incredible service to the country. And I'm wondering what goes through your mind, knowing this region as well as you do, when you listen to the pushback here about timing and who pushed who and why this is the right moment.
Look, that's all in the rearview mirror. We've made the decision, we're executing. So what's important now, I think, is exactly what Secretary Rubio and before him Senator Graham said, is the missiles, the missiles, the missiles. If that stops, all this stops. If they cannot strike the consulate, if they cannot strike an airfield, if you cannot strike anything, they're neutered. So the number one objective, I think the president has alluded to, and Secretary Rubio reinforced in spades, get the missiles. So this next big wave, I'm sure, is going to try to just annihilate and deplenish what remains of their missiles. Now, I would add, it'd be helpful if we could get indicator of where they are on the scope. Are we 50% there, 80%? I think that would calm some people down. But again, their messaging has been a brilliant act of deception. So again, I won't want to second guess, but if you want kind of quiet the mob, knowing where we are in that primary objective would be helpful.
I'm curious how you assess the way that Iran's regime is approaching this. You know, they're attacking the Gulf states. They just hit, it was unsuccessful, but they aimed apparently, according to reports, at our U.S. embassy in Dubai. You know, and who do you think is hitting the button now, given the degradation of their leadership?
Well, look, they're gone. This is their last chance, their last throw everything they got on the table for survival. You know, and to survive, that means getting Trump out of the picture. So their number one objective is to survive President Trump. And I think we're already past that point. So this is the last gasp effort. And once we address this issue of the missiles, we have all the time to do anything we want, be it the nuclear programs or other military capabilities. So that, again, address those missiles, and we can take our time to do whatever we want to do.
Admiral Harward, thank you very much. You're a great guest. It's great to have you with us. Hope to speak to you again soon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
American journalist and activist Masih Alinejad. She has survived 3 assassination attempts by the Iranian regime, and she has been elated lately that the regime is hopefully crumbling and that Khomeini is gone. Give us a sense.
Is dead.
On what you are hearing about what's happening on the ground in Iran right now, because everyone is very curious.
Mostly people repeating the news. Khomeini is dead. It's like they have been waiting for years to actually say that loud and clear in the streets, in the streets, the family members of the victims, women who were blinded intentionally in order of Ali Khamenei, Revolutionary Guards members, with one eye taking to the street, dancing, and saying that, wow, even with one eye, we're able to see justice. So here I heard actually people in Israel, they hear sirens, they know there's warning, and that kind of like broke my heart, because my people in Iran, no warning, no shelter, no one is there to take care of the lives of ordinary people. Instead, Martha, in Iran, sources telling me that some of the military centers evacuated the security forces. Instead, they're going to schools across Tehran, across countries. So they're actually using the school as a human shield. Is that familiar?
Yeah. The members of the military, like Hamas, absolutely.
Exactly. And that's why when students get killed, my heart aches. My heart is broken, because I know that this is the regime that they do not care about the lives of innocent people. So I want to ask the U.S. government, the Israeli government, to actually be more precise and accurate, targeted action against the killers. For instance, people are telling me now they're very happy, very excited when they heard that one of the target was the Assembly of Experts. So for some of the Americans, they might say, wow, now Israeli government and American government, they killed Iranian expert. No, Assembly of Experts is Assembly of mullahs, bunch of clerics sitting there making decision who can be the next supreme leader. So when this is the target, that's a sign for the people of Iran that American government, the U.S. government, is not going to deliberately hurt civilians.
So, I think everybody wants to know what happens next. No one knows how long this military campaign will take to take out, as the president has outlined, the ballistic missile systems, short range and long range, the Iranian Navy, and the leadership, clearly, and any potential for a nuclear weapon. So are people right now continuing to hunker down because they're afraid to go out into the streets? We saw what happened, when they protested a few months ago. Where is everyone right now?
First of all, I have to say, in 12 days war, is that you mentioned, actually? Yes. So that was absolutely different, because nobody from political leadership was eliminated. And that actually created, I have to be honest with you, if in 12 days war, the target was Ali Khamenei, we wouldn't have seen this massacre. So that's why Iranians are very, very concerned. They're telling me, some of my friends, some of the activists and dissidents inside Iran, they're really worried and concerned about the situation. But at the same time, they want me to send this message to President Trump. Finish the job. If you leave us alone with a wounded regime, they will take revenge on innocent and unarmed people. But Martha, let's be very,
How much of the regime do you think is left?
More than 40 high-ranking members of Revolutionary Guard and political leaders have been removed. Sign of justice. But still, the reformists are in power. Because still, I think maybe President Trump or other leaders from Persian Gulf countries, Arab countries, giving advice that this regime can be reformed. Impossible. This regime is like ISIS. ISIS cannot be reformed. So I strongly believe that still, when there are people like the son of Ali Khamenei, like the son of Khomeini, so these people might think that they can actually replace Ali Khamenei, and that's the big concern of Iranian people. What I want to say here, Arab countries were hesitating to take a stance, but now they are the target of the Islamic Republic. What is the point that they're hesitating? I don't really get that. So this is the right moment. We need a political coalition, the leaders from Arab countries. Where is Europe? Why should we just put the pressure on United States of America? We need an international coalition.
Well, it's pretty stunning. I think that the Iranian hits on the Gulf states have activated them in a way that we never would have expected in a prior iteration of the layout in the Middle East. Masi, thank you very much. We'll talk.
The developments continue to come in with the raid on Iran, the attacks there on behalf of the Israelis and the Americans. Democrat lawmakers now being rather outspoken outspoken against the U.S.'s decision to strike Iran with Israel, calling it unconstitutional and illegal. But Secretary of State Marco Rubio contending the administration has followed the law 100%, informing the gang of 8 lawmakers throughout Operation Epic Fury. Carrie Urban is our Fox News legal editor. And Carrie, welcome to our program. You were watching Senator John Fetterman. He might be the only Democratic senator to vote with Republicans on this. What does the law say? What is the duty of the president in a circumstance like this?
Well, Bill, courts have been reluctant to get involved in this issue for a very obvious reason, and it's because the president is the commander-in-chief. He has really strong inherent authority here, and there's a reason for that. The number one job of an American president is to keep people safe. It is why he's commander-in-chief. And it's also why Congress has only formally declared war a handful of times, which is in contrast to the hundreds of times presidents have engaged in military conduct since the beginning of our country without congressional approval. Bill, I didn't realize that the last time Congress declared war was World War II. And think about all of the times that we have engaged our military since then. So that was done without any kind of formal declaration of war. And look, I think if you look at the facts of last week, they really support the president's position here. Marco Rubio and John Radcliffe briefed the Gang of 8. Tom Cotton said he received a phone call giving them advance notice right before the strikes happened. They engaged in those strikes. And so I think if you look at both the law and just how things have been done in the past, the president and his team are fully within their rights to do what they're doing.
Okay, a couple of things. You mentioned Marco Rubio. Go ahead. Here's what he said yesterday afternoon after he briefed the 8 senators, the Gang of 8.
To begin with, no presidential administration has ever accepted the War Powers Act as constitutional. Not Republican presidents, not Democratic presidents. That said, we have followed the notification at 48 hours. We're here today. I've done more Gang of 8 briefings than I got in the 4 years that Biden was president and I was a member of the Gang of 8. All of that said, we've complied with the law 100%, and we're going to continue to comply with it.
Okay, that was from yesterday. Here is Senator Mark Warner. He's a Democrat from Virginia. He's got, it's a 180, Carrie. Here we go.
The idea that there is then not a constitutional responsibility for the president to come to Congress after he's built up this fleet, and now, not my words, his words, launched a war against Iran. Anyone who argues otherwise hasn't read the Constitution.
So you got that comment there, and you're saying back to World War II was the last time?
They formally declared war. And look, I would argue that Congress did alert him. I mean, Mark Warner is part of the Gang of 8. So he did know, for starters. And two, I think the way we need to think about declaring war, it's a formal state of war versus individual military strikes. And we all know, just based on reading books and watching movies, what a state of war must have felt like during World War II. Clearly, this is not that at this point. And you can look at the last, 30, 40, 50 years and identify instance after instance, which is similar to now. And it is true that every president has declared the Wars Act unconstitutional. And, the last point I would just make is, look, Iran has been attacking us and our allies for 47 years. At some point, it has to stop. They followed what they were supposed to do in briefing the right people last week. And here we are.
Okay. Here's another story that's been buried as of Friday night into Saturday. Bill and Hillary Clinton sat for 2 days of depositions in their hometown of Chappaqua, New York. And a lot of people have been parsing through the hours and hours of the back and forth trying to find a headline. Here is one. Here is the former President Bill Clinton talking about Donald Trump.
The president never, this is 20-something years ago, never said anything to me to make me think he was involved in anything improper with regard to Epstein either. He just didn't. He just said we were friends, and then we had a falling out over a land deal, property deal. That's all.
Carrie, you've gone through this. What do you think Republicans got from this? What do you think Democrats got from this?
I think they both lost. I think that the Clintons came off in a pretty good light. Hillary Clinton came off confident and strong. Bill Clinton, even if some of his answers were a bit unbelievable, he was very likable. Trump won based on what Clinton said about him. I don't think there were any bombshells that emerged. And I will say this, Bill, about the clip you just showed. The clip right after that would be even more interesting, and that's because after he says what he says there, the Democrats quickly moved on. Bill Clinton then raised his hand and said, basically, wait a second, I want to add more because you didn't ask me anything more about my Trump. And then he continued to defend Trump and give a very elaborate, detailed story about how Trump told him many years ago that he and Epstein had had a falling out. So it was clearly an intentional move on his part, and I would say probably the most interesting moment of his deposition.
He said, as I said earlier, the only conversation I had with President Trump about this was in the early 2000s now. He's going back 25 years to recall that. I have no information that he did anything wrong. So we'll go through that as we get it. Kerry, thank you so much for coming on. We got more news to get to. Appreciate you coming on today. Thank you, Kerry.
Thank you.
All right.
In that first meeting, both the Iranian negotiators said to us directly, with no shame, that they controlled 460 kilograms of 60%, and they're aware that that could make 11 nuclear bombs, and that was the beginning of their negotiating stance.
Joining me now to continue the conversation is physicist and weapons expert David Albright. David, thanks for being with us here today. The strike happening when it did obviously had the benefit of having all of the leaders or most of the leaders of Iran in one location. But as to the point of how dangerous it was getting with Iran's nuclear capabilities, what were we on the brink of? How close?
Well, I think what the Iranians are talking about is their inventory of highly enriched uranium that could be converted into weapon-grade uranium, and it's enough for about 11 nuclear weapons. And that material was not destroyed in the June war, and so it's still in Iran. I mean, some of it's buried in the Fordow mountain complex, probably not recoverable. But there's a large quantity of it in a mountain complex at the Esfahan nuclear site. And we know from satellite imagery over the months that Iran regained access to that site. It had been attacked by Tomahawk cruise missiles. And so our understanding is it's still in that complex, but that Iran may be able to get access to some of it. I mean, we think some of the mountain complex was damaged by U.S. Tomahawks, but nonetheless. And so what Iran's trying to do is leverage that. And in essence, this is a playbook they often use, is try to threaten the United States that they'll do this. Now, in this case, we do have to worry that they could use this highly enriched uranium with some gas centrifuges that may still remain to make weapon-grade uranium and try to march down the path to nuclear weapons. And so we think that there's forces on Iran against that, but nonetheless, it remains a concern. And it was a factor in trying to figure out, is it necessary to strike Iran? Now, what I would argue is that if the administration believes this, then make sure that they deal with this highly enriched uranium inventory, which they left in place last time and did not, in a sense, bring down the mountain in some way to lock it in and make it very hard to recover.
And how would they deal with that now? With strikes on the mountain?
I think that's the easiest way. I mean, Iran is nervous. It has 3 tunnel entrances at Esfahan Mountain. They, as I said, went back into one of them, and we think they drove trucks into one. But now, in the last several weeks, they actually covered them completely with dirt. So they feel there's something important in there, and they're worried about tunnel access through the tunnel entrance. But these mountains have vulnerabilities. I mean, Iran can try to bury these things, but the United States has tremendous weaponry, and I do believe that this stock has to be dealt with. Now, commandos cannot dig their way in there unless Iran's already defeated, but certainly the mountain can be shook in a way or damaged in a way that it would be very hard for Iran to recover the highly enriched uranium and then use it to make a bomb. Short of that material, it's going to just take them longer and longer to be able to succeed.
There's also the question of what China was doing at this very moment to bolster Iran. And we're going to get into that a little bit later in the show, the relationship between China and Iran. Thank you so much for being with us today, David Albright.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.